Listen, have you ever just felt like a failure in business? You're like, my last thing failed. The thing before that failed.
Ugh.
And you're just like, how are people going to look at me? Like you're battling with trusting yourself. And I think that's one of the hardest parts. But listen. You're not a failure. You're not a failure. You can do this if you do this one thing.
Listen, we're Michael and Khalea Cooper, and we make videos like this all the time to help you get out of the life that you can't stand, that you hate waking up for, so that you can get into the life that you can't wait to wake up for. Being a full time business entrepreneur, running your own business, setting your own schedule, and having true time freedom. So, if this is something that interests you, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Make sure to turn on the notification bell because we're putting content out like this all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So, have you ever just felt like, man, I failed at this thing or it didn't do as good as I wanted to do?
Mm, yeah.
Like, you know that feeling?
Yeah, like you started a business, you stepped out there and you really just kind of went for it and you were all excited about it, and then it just flopped.
Yeah.
And now you're terrified because now you're back working into a comfortable job that you don't really enjoy, but it's what's paying the bills. And let me just interject here. If you're ever asked about what you do and you tell them, well, it pays the bills, I've got news for you. You're in the wrong thing.
Ooh,
What you're describing, what you're spending literally the majority of your life doing, should not be something that you have to categorize as, well, it pays the bills.
yeah.
So that I just wanted to throw that out there. That was for somebody. I don't know who that was for.
You're not
But
here just to pay bills.
you're not here just to pay bills. And so we want you to understand that there are numerous things that you have the ability to monetize. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's important to understand that just because you failed at something in the past doesn't mean that you're not the person who is able to do it. It just means that thing failed. And I bet if we looked under the hood of it, we could pinpoint why it failed. It's not because you're a failure. It may just be you didn't quite know what you were doing. You didn't have the proper things in place, or get this, maybe it was just the wrong timing. Maybe it wasn't the right timing for that thing that you thought was perfect for you in that season. But you yourself are not a failure. And we're going to show you what the simple keys are to being able to pick yourself back up off the mat and say, you know what? That last thing failed, and the thing before that failed, and the thing before that didn't go so hot either.
Yeah.
But I'm tired of living this life that I can't stand waking up for, and I'm ready to try this thing again.
That's so good. So, just to share with you, you're totally not alone. My husband and I have done over $500,000 between multiple of our different companies within just a few years. But we have had some businesses
Yeah.
that did not obviously do that. That failed, or it felt like a failure.
In other words, we didn't get it all right the first shot.
Yes, or the second.
Yeah. Both of us actually had a couple businesses that, made some money, did okay, but it was way more work than the reward ended up being. But
the compensation.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Share a little bit about what your journey has been with that.
Yeah, so I went full time in business about 4 years ago. Okay. And so in that, I started this company. I was so excited. I heard about this business idea. It was called Lead Gen Designs. And basically in that, I was selling websites. And I hired on a few staff to create these websites because I wasn't the website designer, but I found somebody who is good at it. And I would have them create these websites for these different companies, and we would pitch them to them. And let's just say I spent more than I made. And I didn't sell any websites. And so I was like, okay, that didn't work. That didn't. I thought I was going to be like rolling in the dough. Now you get an idea and you're like, I'm going to be rolling in the dough. but it wasn't the thing that like God had called me to do. So then next, I started a drop shipping company. Actually, I purchased it, right? And I made a little bit of money with that, and I flipped it and I sold it for a higher amount. So made a little bit of money, not anything, but just made a little bit of money.
Made something.
So then I was like, oh, I could do this again. So I bought another drop shipping company, which is kind of like an online e-commerce company. Okay, and I built up the brand for it, and then I sold it for more money. Like I built up the brand,
Actually made a good profit off.
Yeah,
of it.
I made a pretty good profit off of it, like a really good profit. It wasn't, anything that would take care of me for the year or anything like that, but it was a nice little bit of amount of change. But I was like, you know what? Like that was a lot of work that I put into that to make that profit, and it's not necessarily like my passion. And so you could look at that, and from the amount of money that I had made, which was maybe like $1,200, so it wasn't like anything like super crazy, okay? That could look like a failure. And I could have felt like a failure and I could have given up, but I knew that I was passionate about entrepreneurship. I knew that I had something amazing to offer the world and that I could not give up. If I just stopped because it was like, oh, I didn't make $1 million. Oh, I didn't make 6 figures from that. I guess I just can't do it. I wouldn't be where I am today.
But what did you do? I think this would be helpful for them to know. What did you do after those businesses kind of, you could say some failed, some were moderately successful. What did you do? You were so discouraged in your chance to be a business owner at that time that you went and said, well, maybe I'm just supposed to go to nursing school.
Mm.
And you started working in the medical field, doing something you really weren't that passionate about. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe I just need to go become a nurse. And I didn't want to work a lot because I have a family. And so I was like, well, I'll just go to nursing school because I'll make more money than what I'm making now. And I'll just go on about my life. And that'll be my life.
And you were kind of set that because you had failed in other areas that this was just like, I guess this is what it is. This is what it is. Now, a lot of people say nursing is a good job. And you know what? It is. If that's good for you, if you don't mind the hours, if you don't mind everything that comes with it, and absolutely it is needed, then that's for you. Go be the best nurse you can be.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you were just doing that because you felt like that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
Wow. So then how did you get out of that and get back on your feet and say, no, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and get to the point where you were able to build the businesses that you have now?
It took knowing what I wanted. So you have to know what you want. And then you have to have faith that that desire is there for a reason and that you can attain it. And so for me, I was like, I know I want to run a 7-figure business. And first off, I set a goal for myself. I said, I am going to hit 6 figures in my business and I'm going to put the work in. And so I found a mentor and I invested. And I studied my tail off and I worked my tail off. And now we've hit multiple 6 figures. And I know that I'm destined for 7 figures. And for me, I take away the timeline from it. Because I'm like, if it takes me, I would like to hit it sooner. If it takes me 10 years and I've built a 7-figure per year business, is it worth it?
Well, the cool thing is, regardless of if you do it or not, 10 years is going to pass one way or another.
Yeah.
So that 10 years is going to move on and happen whether you're making 7 figures per year in your business or not. So you might as well go for it.
Yeah, so it's like the time is going to pass regardless. Are you moving towards what you want? Are you going to be resilient towards what you want? Because time is going to pass. You're going to be doing something. Are you going to be doing what you want? And it's like, if you knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you kept putting in the work that you were going to be hitting 100K months, would you stop?
No chance.
Why would you stop? If you knew that it's inevitable, That's the type of faith you have to have. If you knew it was inevitable, would you give up?
Mm.
Would you throw away everything that you worked so hard for just because I feel like a failure? I feel like failure isn't really real unless you give up.
Here's the secret. Here's the secret. You never failed. You just learned a new lesson. Now, a lot of times we look back at the things that happened to us and we say, oh, that happened to us. I failed at that because blah, 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 whatever the reason is. But what if we started looking at things in our past as not things that happened to us, but things that happened for us? When you learn how to do that, let's look at your first business, Lead Gen Designs. You said, well, I end up spending more money than I made. But what you made from that was a new knowledge of what people want and how to position it and sell it. So you did make something. It just didn't come in the form that you thought it should.
Right.
And each time, each of those other two businesses,
Learn how to build a brand.
You learned something a little different. You learned, okay, I need a brand first, and then I can sell. And then you started to being able to sell, and you were able to make a profit there. So everything that happens in your past is happening to help you learn something so you can ultimately get where you're trying to go.
That's so good.
Is this good? Has this been helping anybody? Like, if this is helping you, let us know in the comments that this is helping you. Also, if you want to dive deeper into topics like this, if you want to learn how did Michael and Khalea go from having no businesses to having businesses that failed to having businesses that were moderately profitable, but nothing that's going to cause them to walk away from their day job, to now having multiple six-figure companies that they're on their way to scaling to 7 figures. If you're curious on how we were able to do that, what things we learned along the way, and how you can do the same thing, then click the link in the description or the link in our bio and register for the 6-Figure CEO Masterclass. I promise you it's going to be life-changing, and we're going to give you what we've learned through this process.